Hey there, in today's video, I'm going to compare the Nike ZoomFly 6 with the Nike Alphafly 3. I'm making this video because I recently bought the Nike ZoomFly 6, and since then I've been using them for short runs, long runs on the road and the track. I've done 53 kilometers, about 33 miles in them, and I'm seriously impressed by the shoe. I also have the Alphafly 3. I've done 222 kilometers in them, about 138 miles. I love this world record-breaking shoe. The Nike Alphafly 3 and ZoomFly 6, they're both Nike carbon plate racing shoes. And in this video, I'm going to test one against the other. I've made various videos of both, which I'll link in the description below and at the end. And as always, this video might be long. There are chapter markers down below, so you can skip on through the bits you might be interested in. Let's get going. To go through some specification comparisons first, in terms of the tech, in terms of the midsole, the ZoomFly 6 uses ZoomX with a combination of SR02 foam. And the Alphafly 3 uses ZoomX with two AirZoom foot pods up the front. In terms of use case, the ZoomFly 6 is training and racing, whereas the Alphafly 3 is racing, according to Nike. And the stack heights are fairly similar. Nike say that the ZoomFly 6 has their highest stack height of a racing shoe anyway, at 42 millimeters. The Alphafly 3's is 40 millimeters, and that's the maximum limit of the World Athletics body. And then the drop is the same, 8 millimeters in both shoes. The weight as tested, and I take a UK size 12, US men's 13, and I think in Nike EU 47.5. But the ZoomFly 6 is heavier at 312 grams, 11.01 ounces versus the Alphafly 3 at 266 grams, 9.38 ounces. And the cost that's a pretty reasonable difference in terms of the weight, but the cost, and this varies by territory, but the ZoomFly 6 is €169.99, 170 US dollars, 154 pounds 99 sterling, and 260 Australian dollars. Whereas the Alphafly 3, particularly in Europe, is significantly more expensive at €309.99. In the US, it's $285, 284.99 pounds sterling, and 370 Australian dollars. And one thing to note is that the ZoomFly 6 will be regularly discounted, not when it's just out, as it is at the moment, but, you know, it'll be part of the regular Nike sales, whereas the Alphafly 3 is rarely part of the Nike sales. In terms of the running feel, the shoes are surprisingly similar, more similar to each other than the Vaporfly 3, which I also tested back-to-back with these. The ZoomFly 6, its SR02 foam, is a little firmer than the Alphafly 3. I can feel it more at slower speeds when I tend more to be on my heels. At faster speeds, not so much. And both are high-stacked shoes, which have, you know, cornering, careful on the corners. And I found with the ZoomFly 6 is more traction issues. Maybe it's got to rubber in a bit more, but yeah, a little less traction than in the Alphafly 3. Specification comparisons and running feel are one thing, but to really judge the shoes, what about their performance? I'm curious as to the difference in the performance, so I decided to do a variety of tests. For testing equipment, I have two Stride foot pods to measure running power. Stride is connected to my Apple Watch Ultra. My Garmin HRM Pro measures my heart rate, and that's connected to my Garmin FR955 measuring pace. And I have one old lab rat, and all of those devices are connected to him. The tests that I do typically form part of my Stride marathon training program. In all of them, in all the different segments, I warm up before each one, and then I stabilize my heart rate before each session as close as I can to get even data. A few specifications on the lab rat and test mule. My fastest marathon time is 3:43 in Rotterdam, 2023, age 60, Boston qualified. My 10K time from last year was 47:55. In the Scaries 10K, my 5K time is 22 minutes in 2022. And then my 1 kilometer time was 2 minutes, 43 seconds in 2024. So I can run reasonably fast, just not for very long. Test 1 was my Stride HM Power Tempo. I'll put the data up here. I won't go through all of it, but part of the segment was 13 minutes in the ZoomFly 6, rest 13 minutes in the Alphafly 3 on the track. The idea was to run at a set power and see if the pace differs. After the tests, there was surprisingly little to separate the shoes when I ran at the same power. The Alphafly 3 had a slightly longer stride, less vertical oscillation, less ground contact time, but not by very much. Now, those are the numbers that stand out for me by the data. You may have others. You can pause the video when the various statistics are on the screen, and there will be links in the description, and you can download or look at my Stride data and analyze them to your heart's content. And it would be interesting to see what different conclusions you come to. Test 2 was on the treadmill, 10 minutes at a constant pace in the ZoomFly 6, then rest, then the Alphafly 3. The idea was to run at the same pace, see if the heart rate differed significantly, see if I was working harder to maintain the same pace and use the shoe. I ran at 12 kilometers an hour, about 7.5 miles per hour, about my 10K pace. Tried to compare my heart rate and effort. And in the ZoomFly 6 was 151 beats per minute, and the Alphafly 3, 152 beats per minute. Very little separate them. So then I had a go in my very heavy, very trusty Infinity Run 4 GTXs. And yeah, then I was up to 160 beats per minute. So yeah, little let's separate the ZoomFly 6 and the Alphafly 3. At this stage, I was getting a bit frustrated not being able to separate shoes. So I headed back down to the track to do 3 minutes in each. The Alphafly 3 followed by the ZoomFly 6, followed by the Alphafly 3, followed by the ZoomFly 6. That was the plan. A set power of 312 watts and see if the pace changed. And going back to back to back in the different shoes. And again, I'll put the data up here so you can have a look. And after all that, it was really hard to separate the shoes out. They were near indistinguishable in terms of their various stats, and certainly compared to the variances of pace and power. Yeah, still struggling to separate these two shoes. Test 4, back to the track again, and this time have the Alphafly 3 at bookends and the ZoomFly 6 in the middle. Target time of about 4 minutes 40 per kilometer, and run at roughly my 5K pace. Usually I would run in the ZoomFly 6 first, but this time I want to sandwich it in the middle, up the pace, look at the power. And I did the runs were from a standing start. The Alphafly 3, I did 4 minutes 37 on average, and then I did 4:36 in the ZoomFly 6 and 4:37 in the Alphafly 3, probably about 3 laps, but I just picked the data from the middle 2 laps in each session. And it was a kind of interesting up to a point. And the point being that in the first Alphafly session, and these paces are pretty much identical, in the first one, in the Alphafly 3, I was putting in 300 watts. And then middle one, in the ZoomFly 6, I was putting in 307 watts. And then again, for the last session, in the Alphafly 3, 301 watts. So after all of these tests, yeah, slightly more power to go at the same pace, at least in this test. Caveat emptor. I do these tests to answer questions that I ask myself about the various shoes. Questions that I think shoe companies should be answering, but they aren't. I would really like larger studies. I can only do small scale studies, and I make them videos to see if they'll be useful to me, and hopefully they'll be useful to you. But there are a lot of caveats. The lab rat is old. The lab rat is running solo. The data set is small. What works for me may not work for you. And you have to frame the conclusions within the caveats above. But yeah, after all that time, I found very little to separate these shoes. Should you buy these shoes, the ZoomFly 6 or the Alphafly 3? Well, I can recommend both of the shoes. But if you had to choose only one, well, it's sort of bang for buck time. The ZoomFly 3 scores really highly. There's a very small gap in performance versus the Alphafly 3, and there's a large gap in price. I would imagine that the additional weight would be a factor if the tests were longer. And I would like to see them in a marathon, but I won't be expecting to see any of these in the pointy end of the marathon, simply because at 42 millimeters, they're going to be above the World Athletics stack height. But money no object, and you wanted to run your Boston qualifier, the Alphafly 3 all day long. But value for money, and you only got to get one shoe, this is a really great shoe, particularly for the money. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful. If you did, it'd be great if you'd hit the like button. As always, there'll be lots of stuff in the description below. I'll happily answer any questions you put into the comments. There'll be a big blue subscribe button popping up there, and some other videos there. Thanks for watching. Until the next video, just keep running along.